In the year of our Lord 1795, when the Black Forest still harbored its ancient shadows beneath the thin veil of Christendom, there dwelt a miller named Jakob Reinhardt in a solitary glen upon the very edge of the Schwarzwald. His mill stood beside a rushing brook that fell from the high ridges, its great wheel turning with a ceaseless groan, grinding what little grain the unkind earth yielded. Jakob had once been reckoned a man of comfortable estate, but misfortune had descended upon him like a winter storm. First, the long drought that withered the fields round about, then the flood that bore away his winter provision, and lastly, the debts that fastened upon him like iron chains, drawn ever tighter by the merchants of Freiburg. At 46 years, his shoulders were bowed, his beard more silver than sable, and his eyes held the weary look of one who beholdeth no light betwixt sunrise and sunset. His good wife Anna was a woman of profound piety, brought up in the fear of the Lord, and she endured their afflictions with patient heart, turning ever to prayer when strength of flesh failed. Their only child, a daughter named Clara, was the single gleam of joy in their darkened dwelling. She was now in her 17th summer, fair beyond the common measure of millers' daughters, with hair dark as midnight and skin pale as fresh-fallen snow. Her eyes were of a soft hazel, warm as autumn leaves, and in them dwelt a gentleness tempered with quiet fortitude. Clara labored from the crowing of the cock until the stars appeared, sweeping the mill floor, tending the small herb garden, spinning wool by candlelight. Yet never did a word of complaint pass her lips, for her soul was filled with trust in God's mercy and compassion toward the suffering. But hunger prowled the house like a lean wolf at the door, and the larder held naught but a handful of dried peas and a sack of rye touched by mold. Jakob took to venturing deeper into the forest for firewood, hoping to barter bundles in the village for bread or a few groschen to hold the creditors at bay a little longer. It was upon one such bleak afternoon in late October, when the mist lay thick betwixt the trunks and the path was nigh lost, that he encountered the stranger. Jakob had just hewn down a dead alder and was binding the branches with osier withes, when the man stepped forth from the fog as though the trees themselves had conjured him. Tall he was, clad in a long cloak of blackest cloth that seemed to swallow the dim light, and beneath a wide hat his face was sharp and pale, his eyes burning like embers beneath ash. He bore neither axe nor burden, yet his presence filled the glade with a chill deeper than the autumn air. "Wherefore dost thou torment thyself so, worthy miller?" quoth the stranger, his voice smooth as honey yet cold as grave earth. "I can make thee rich, rich beyond all thy longing, if thou wilt but promise me that which standeth behind thy mill." Jakob, worn with toil and despair gnawing at his heart, bethought him of the old pear tree that grew in the courtyard behind the mill house. "What harm can there be in a pear tree?" he thought within himself. "'Tis but wood and fruit." Aloud he answered, "Yea, stranger, I promise it thee. Take the tree and grant me riches in return." The stranger's mouth curved in a smile that touched not his eyes, and he drew forth a parchment from beneath his cloak. Jakob set his mark upon it with the quill the man proffered, and when no ink was ready, the stranger pricked Jakob's thumb and sealed the bond with a drop of blood. "In 3 years' time I shall come for mine own," quoth he, and with a low laugh he vanished into the mist, leaving behind only the faint scent of sulphur upon the wind. When Jakob returned home at twilight, he found the house transformed as by sorcery. Chests that had stood empty now overflowed with shining thalers and guilders. The granary groaned beneath sacks of fine wheat and barley. The larder was filled with smoked hams, wheels of cheese, and barrels of salted fish. Anna came running to meet him, her eyes wide with wonder and fear commingled. "Husband, speak truly. Whence cometh this sudden abundance? The house is filled as though by heavenly provision, yet no soul hath brought it." Jacob told her of the stranger in the wood and the promise he had given. At first, Anna rejoiced with him, for the hunger was banished, and the debts might now be paid. But when he spake of that which standeth behind the mill, her countenance grew pale as death. "Jacob," she whispered, trembling, "that was no mortal man thou mettest. 'Twas the evil one himself, the Teufel in mortal guise. Behind the mill this morn stood not the pear tree, but our Clara. She was sweeping the yard when thou didst depart." A great horror seized Jacob's heart, and he fell upon his knees, crying out to heaven for mercy. But the gold was real, the grain was real, and for 3 long years they lived in ease. The mill wheel turned merrily, the debts were discharged, new garments of fine wool were bought for all, and the house rang with unaccustomed comfort. Clara grew yet more comely, her piety deepening with every passing day. She attended divine service without fail, shared their bread with wayfarers at the gate, and spent long hours in prayer before the little wayside cross. Yet a shadow lay upon Jacob. He shunned the deep forest, drank overmuch of strong waters in the evenings, and could scarce meet his daughter's gentle eyes. The appointed day came at last, upon a morning when the rain beat hard against the shutters and the brook roared in angry spate. The devil appeared at the door, no longer in disguise, but in his true likeness, horns curling from his brow, eyes aflame with hellfire, tail lashing the ground like a scourge. "I'm come for the maid," he snarled, his voice like stones grinding together. Jacob fell to his knees again. "Take the tree, take the gold, take all that I have, but spare my child." The devil laughed, a sound that made the very rafters tremble. "The bond is sealed in blood. She is mine by lawful right." Clara stepped forward then, pale as linen, but with voice steady as the rock of faith. "If thou wouldst have me, come and take me," quoth she, and with chalk from the hearth she drew a circle round herself upon the flagstones, then washed her hands and face in holy water blessed at Eastertide. The devil strode toward her, but could not cross the sacred circle. Her purity repelled him as light repelleth darkness. In furious wrath he turned upon Jacob. "Remove all water from the house, that she may not wash and remain clean, else I take thee to the pit this instant." Jacob, mad with terror, obeyed. He hid every vessel, barred the well, poured away the rain-butts. That night Clara wept long and bitterly, and her tears fell upon her hands, keeping them pure in spirit. The devil returned at the first crowing of the cock, raging yet more fiercely. "Still clean! Cut off her hands, miller, or I drag thee down with me." Anna threw herself betwixt them, crying, "Better we all perish than commit such abomination before God." But Jacob's fear was greater than his love or his faith. With hands that shook like leaves in the storm, he sharpened the great axe upon the whetstone till its edge gleamed cold. Clara knelt before him in the courtyard, laying her arms upon the chopping block. "Dear father," she said softly, "do with me as thou must. I am thy child, and I forgive thee with my whole heart. The Lord beholdeth my innocence, and will not forsake me." The axe fell once, then twice. Blood gushed forth upon the stones, red against gray, and the severed hands lay pale in the pouring rain. Clara uttered no cry, though her face grew whiter than death and her body swayed with the shock of it. Anna caught her as she fell, binding the stumps with clean linen, applying salves of healing herbs and murmuring prayers without cease. The devil came the third time. But Clara's tears had fallen upon the wounds, and her soul remained pure as driven snow. With a howl of baffled rage, he vanished in a cloud of choking smoke, his claim broken forever. Jakob fell into the deepest abyss of despair, drinking strong spirits till he saw naught but phantoms. Anna tended Clara night and day, but the pain was grievous beyond telling, and fever followed hard upon the loss. Whispers spread through the village. Curse, devil's work, judgment upon the house. "Thou canst not remain here," Jakob said at length, his voice broken and hollow. "The talk, the shame, it will destroy us all." Clara, weak but resolute in spirit, nodded. "I will go forth into the wide world. The good Lord will provide for his handmaiden." At the break of day, with her arms bound behind her back to guard the wounds from harm, she kissed her weeping mother farewell and walked alone into the forest. The trees closed about her like a living shroud. The mist swallowed her footsteps, and Jakob watched from the door till she was lost to sight, his heart heavier than any millstone he had ever borne. The wealth remained, but it tasted now of bitterest ashes. If this tale of desperate bargain and grievous sacrifice hath stirred thy soul, the frailty of a father's heart, the steadfast faith of a daughter's spirit, then tarry with me yet a while in these shadowed ways. Subscribe thou gently, as one might lay a hand upon a grieving friend, and like this story, if its sorrow hath touched thee. Together we shall follow the maiden upon her lonely path, for greater trials await her still. The forest receiveth all wanderers, yet few find mercy within its depths. Clara walked onward through the endless trees, her steps faltering upon the uneven ground, the pain in her bandaged stumps a constant fire that burned without cease. The rain had turned to a fine, cold drizzle that soaked her woolen cloak and chilled her to the bone, but she pressed on, for to stop was to die. Her arms, bound behind her to protect the wounds, made balance difficult. More than once she stumbled and fell upon the damp leaves, rising again with gritted teeth and a silent prayer upon her lips. Hunger gnawed at her belly, thirst parched her throat, yet she dared not drink from the dark streams that crossed her path, fearing poison or further affliction. Days blurred into one another, 3, perhaps 4, she could not tell. The forest seemed to shift and change about her, paths appearing and vanishing as though the trees themselves mocked her plight. At night she curled beneath low branches, shivering in the cold, whispering the psalms her mother had taught her until sleep claimed her. In her fevered dreams she saw her father's anguished face, heard the devil's mocking laughter, felt the axe bite anew. Yet always she woke with the same quiet resolve. The Lord had spared her soul. He would not abandon her body to the wild. On the 5th day, or was it the 6th, the trees began to thin, and through the mist Clara beheld a high stone wall overhung with ivy. Beyond it rose the towers of a great castle, their banners limp in the damp air. The wall enclosed a royal garden, for she could see the tops of fruit trees heavy with late pears and apples, their branches bending under the weight. A moat surrounded the wall, broad and still, its waters dark as ink. Hunger tormented her now beyond bearing. Her legs trembled, her vision swam. If I could but taste one fruit, she thought, I might find strength to go on. She fell upon her knees at the water's edge and prayed aloud, her voice weak but earnest. O Lord, who feedeth the ravens and clotheth the lilies, look upon thy handmaiden in her need. Grant me sustenance, I beseech thee, or take me to thy bosom. Tears fell from her eyes as she prayed, mingling with the drizzle upon her cheeks. And lo, as her prayer ended, a figure appeared upon the far bank, an angel in snow-white raiment, radiant even in the grey light. The angel raised a hand, and the waters of the moat parted as though an invisible dam had been raised, leaving a dry path across the muddy bottom. Enter, maiden, quoth the angel, voice gentle as summer wind. The Lord hath heard thy cry. Clara rose and crossed the moat upon the dry path, the angel walking beside her. When they reached the garden, the waters closed behind them as silently as they had opened. The air within the wall was warmer, scented with ripening fruit and damp earth. Trees laden with golden pears stood in orderly rows, their leaves glistening with rain. Clara approached the nearest tree, her mouth watering at the sight. The pears were counted and guarded, yet her need was great. With her mouth alone, for her arms remained bound, she reached up and plucked one ripe fruit from a low branch, eating it slowly, the sweet juice running down her chin. One pear was all she took, for her heart was honest even in desperation. When she had finished, strength returned to her limbs, and she withdrew into the bushes to rest, the angel watching over her unseen. The gardener, an old man named Hans, had observed all from his lodge. He saw the maiden without hands eat the pear with her mouth, saw the white figure beside her, and took her for a spirit. Fear kept him silent. He neither cried out nor approached, but watched until she hid herself among the thicket. When the king, whose name was Albrecht, a young ruler wise beyond his years and kind of hot, came down to the garden the next morning to walk among his trees, he counted the pears as was his custom and found one missing. Hans, quoth he, how cometh it that a pear is gone from this tree? The count was full yesterday. The gardener trembled, but told the truth. Last night, my lord, a spirit came into the garden, a maiden without hands, who ate one pear with her mouth alone. A figure in white stood beside her, and the waters of the moat parted to let her enter. I feared to speak or challenge her, thinking her sent from heaven or elsewhere. The king pondered this tale, his brow furrowed. A spirit without hands, he murmured. We shall watch tonight, and see what manner of visitor this be. That evening the king returned to the garden with his chaplain and the gardener, all three concealing themselves beneath the pear tree. The moon rose silver and full, casting long shadows across the grass. At midnight, the maiden emerged from the bushes, pale and weary, her cloak torn by thorns, her bandaged stumps visible where the binding had loosened. She approached the same tree and ate another pear with her mouth, taking no more. The chaplain stepped forward and spake unto her, Comest thou from heaven or from hell? Art thou spirit or mortal flesh? Clara lifted her head, tears glistening in her eyes. I am no spirit, quoth she, voice soft but clear, but a poor mortal maiden forsaken by all save God. My father, in terror of the evil one, cut off my hands to save his soul, and I have wandered these many days without succor. The king came forth then, and when he beheld her beauty and heard the sorrow in her voice, pity filled his heart. If the world hath forsaken thee, quoth he, then I shall not. Come with me to my palace, and thou shalt lack for nothing." He led her forth from the garden, the chaplain blessing her as they went. In the castle she was bathed and clad in fine raiment, her wounds tended by the king's own physician. So gentle was her manner, so deep her faith, that all who met her loved her. The king himself, seeing her goodness shine through her suffering, grew to love her with all his heart. He caused silver hands to be fashioned for her by the finest smith, delicate, jointed, beautiful to behold, and took her to wife with great rejoicing throughout the realm. A year passed in happiness. Clara, now queen, bore the king a son, strong and healthy, with his father's dark hair and his mother's gentle eyes. The king was away upon the border when the child was born, defending his lands against restless neighbors. The old queen mother who dwelt in the castle sent a messenger with glad tidings. "Thy queen hath borne thee a fair son." But the devil, who had not forgotten his defeat, lay in wait. He intercepted the messenger upon the road, causing him to fall asleep beneath a tree, and changed the letter to one of horror. "The queen hath borne a monster, half child, half beast." When the king read this, grief and doubt filled him, yet he wrote in reply, "Care for the queen and the child until my return. Harm them not." The devil intercepted this letter also, changing it to command, "Put the queen and her monster child to death at once." The old queen mother, reading this, wept bitterly, for she loved Clara as her own daughter. She wrote again to the king, but the devil changed that letter too, and the final command was cruel indeed. "Kill them and send me the queen's tongue and eyes as proof." The old queen mother could not obey such wickedness. She caused the hind to be slain in secret, preserving its tongue and eyes, and gave them as tokens. To Clara she said, "My child, I cannot slay thee as the letter biddeth, but thou canst remain here no longer. Take thy babe and flee into the wide world. The Lord will protect thee." Clara, with tears streaming down her face, bound her son upon her back with linen cloths, and set forth once more into the forest, her silver hands gleaming coldly in the moonlight. The trees closed about her as before, but this time she carried a greater burden, a mother's love for the innocent life entrusted to her. The devil watched from the shadows, smiling his cold smile, for he thought her trials far from ended. The devil delighteth in sowing discord where peace hath taken root. Clara, now queen, lived in the castle with her babe and her silver hands, and the days passed in quiet joy. The child, whom she named Heinrich after his father, grew strong and fair, his laughter echoing through the stone halls like birdsong after winter. The king loved them both with a fierce tenderness, and the court marveled at the queen's gentle spirit, how she bore her affliction without bitterness, helping the poor with alms and prayers. The silver hands, crafted with wondrous skill, moved at her will, though they felt ever cold and strange upon her arms. Yet in the nights, when the child slept at her breast, Clara would weep silently, remembering the warmth of flesh lost forever. The king was called away to war upon the eastern border, where restless barons stirred rebellion. Before he departed, he embraced Clara long and earnestly. "God well our son," quoth he, "and write to me often of thy health and his. My mother shall care for thee in my absence." He kissed the babe's brow and rode forth with his knights' banners flying in the wind. The old queen mother, a woman of kind heart and shrewd eye, tended Clara with a mother's love. When the time came and the child was born safely, she sent a messenger post-haste to the king with letters of glad tidings. "Thy queen hath borne thee a son, fair and healthy, the image of his father. But the devil, who had brooded upon his former defeat these many years, watched from the shadows. He waylaid the messenger upon a lonely road, causing him to fall into deep slumber beneath an oak. While the man slept, the devil changed the letter to one filled with lies. The queen hath borne a monster, half child and half beast, with claws and scales. When the king read this in his camp, grief and doubt assailed him. His heart ached, for he loved Clara truly, yet the words shook him. He wrote in reply, "Keep the queen and the child safe until my return. Do them no harm, but watch them closely." The devil intercepted this letter also, altering it to read, "Slay the queen and the monster child at once, for they are an abomination." The old queen mother received this and wept bitterly, for she knew the king's heart, and could not believe he would command such cruelty. She wrote again to him, seeking clarity, but the devil changed that letter too, making it yet more stern. "Obey my command without delay, or thou shalt answer for disobedience." At last came the foulest letter of all. "Put them to death, and send me the queen's tongue and eyes as proof that my will is done." The old queen mother fell upon her knees in prayer, beseeching guidance. She could not slay the innocent, yet dared not defy what seemed the king's command. In the night, she caused a hind to be taken from the royal park and slain in secret. From it she took the tongue and eyes, preserving them in salt as tokens. Then she went to Clara with tears streaming down her face. "My daughter," quoth she, "I cannot do the wickedness this letter commandeth, yet thou canst remain here no longer, for the king's wrath would fall upon us all. Take thy child and flee into the wide world. The Lord, who hath protected thee thus far, will not abandon thee now." Clara's heart broke anew, but she saw the necessity. With trembling lips she kissed the old woman's cheek. "God bless thee for thy mercy," quoth she. "I will go, and pray for the king's safe return and the revelation of truth." She bound the babe upon her back with linen cloths, for her silver hands could not hold him securely, and at moonrise she slipped from the castle by a postern gate. The gods, moved by pity or bribed with tears, looked the other way. Into the forest she went once more, the trees closing about her like old companions in suffering. The path was dark, the night cold, but Clara walked on, singing soft lullabies to the child that he might not cry. 7 years she wandered, the babe growing into a sturdy boy who learned to walk beside her, holding the hem of her cloak. They lived upon the charity of kind folk in villages and upon the fruits of the wood. The silver hands served her poorly for work, yet her piety and gentle manner moved many hearts. In one place she dwelt with woodcutters who gave her shelter, in another with shepherds who shared their milk and bread. The boy, whom she called Sorrowful in her heart, though she named him Heinrich to the world, grew strong and loving, helping his mother as best a child could. The devil sought her often, sending storms and wolves and sickness, but always an angel appeared in white raiment to guide her steps and turn aside the evil. In hidden glens she found springs of clear water. In desolate places kind strangers offered food. Her faith never wavered, though her body grew thin and her silver hands tarnished with time. Meanwhile the king returned from the war victorious, his heart eager for his wife and child. He rode into the courtyard with trumpets sounding, expecting joyous reunion. But the old queen mother came forth weeping, bearing the preserved tokens. "My son," quoth she, "see what I was commanded to do." She showed him the false letters and the hind's tongue and eyes. The king read them and knew at once the devil's hand. Rage and grief consumed him. "My wife! My son!" he cried. "What have I done through mine own doubt?" He fell into black despair, refusing food and drink, caring for nothing. The old mother comforted him as best she could. "They live," quoth she. "I sent them forth with blessing, not blade. Seek them, my son, and thou shalt find them yet." The king vowed then to search the world until he found them. He set forth alone, taking neither retinue nor riches, only a staff and a grey cloak. For 7 long years he wandered, seeking in every village and forest, asking of a maiden with silver hands and a boy child. He ate the bread of charity, slept in barns and beneath trees, growing lean and weathered. God sustained him when strength failed, for his repentance was true. In the 7th year he came at last to a great wild forest where none dwelt save beasts and birds. Deep within he found a small house with a sign upon the door, "Here all dwell free." A maiden in snow-white raiment came forth and led him within, giving him bread and water. He ate little, for sorrow had dulled his appetite, and lay down to rest with a kerchief over his face. The angel went to Clara, who dwelt in that house with her son, tended by heavenly care these 7 years. "Go forth with thy child," quoth the angel, "thy husband hath come." Clara took the boy by the hand and went to where the weary traveler lay. The kerchief had fallen from his face, and she knew him at once, older, lined with suffering, but her own true lord. Tears filled her eyes as she beheld him. The boy, curious, picked up the kerchief and covered the man's face again. The king stirred in his sleep and let the kerchief fall once more. The child grew impatient. "Dear mother," quoth he, "how can I cover my father's face when I have no father in this world? Thou hast taught me to pray, 'Our Father which art in heaven,' and said my father was the good God above. How can I know this wild stranger?" The king heard these words in his sleep and awoke. He sat up and beheld Clara standing before him, her silver hands gleaming, the boy at her side. Recognition dawned, and he rose with a cry. "My wife! My son!" Clara fell into his arms, weeping for joy. "My lord," quoth she, "the Lord hath restored us." The king beheld her hands, natural flesh once more, grown by God's grace during her years of piety and suffering. He kissed them tenderly. "Forgive me," quoth he, "for the doubt that drove thee forth." "There is naught to forgive," answered Clara. "The evil one sought to destroy us, but love and faith have prevailed." They returned together to the castle, where the old queen-mother waited with open arms. Great was the rejoicing throughout the land. The king and queen were wed anew with feasting and song, and they lived in peace and contentment to their life's end, their son growing to rule wisely after them. The devil's power was broken forever, and the tale of the maiden without hands became a song of hope for all who suffer wrong. 7 years had the king wandered the wide world, seeking his lost wife and child, with a sorrow that ate at his heart like rust upon iron. He had searched in every cleft of the rocks, in every cave and hamlet, asking of a maiden with silver hands and a boy at her side. He ate the bread of strangers, slept upon the hard ground or in poor men's barns, and his royal garments were long since worn to rags. His hair and beard grew wild, his face lined with grief and hardship. Yet God sustained him when his strength failed, for his repentance was deep and true. Neither food nor drink gave him comfort, only the hope that he might one day find them alive and beg their forgiveness. The tale of the maiden without hands became a song sung by firesides, a reminder that God turneth mourning into dancing, and restoreth what the enemy hath stolen.